was lying in a hospital bed on a Tuesday evening, hooked up to monitors after what the doctors called a cardiac event. My heart had been racing erratically all morning until I'd collapsed in my kitchen, and my neighbor, Miss Geneva, had called 911. When my son Kevin and his wife Jessica finally arrived at the hospital 3 hours after I'd been admitted, and the first thing Jessica said wasn't, "How are you feeling?" or "We were so worried," but rather, "Kevin, we need to make this quick. Our reservation at Magnolia's is at 7 and we can't be late." I watched them from my bed as Kevin nodded, checking his watch, and then he turned to my nurse and said with practiced ease, "She'll be fine alone for a few hours, right? My wife and I have an important dinner we can't cancel, but we'll be back to check on her later." The nurse looked uncertain, glancing at my monitors, at the IV in my arm, at the concerned expression I could feel on my own face. But Kevin was already putting on his coat, already edging toward the door, and Jessica was saying, "She's stable. The doctor said so. She doesn't need us hovering." And before I could even process what was happening, they were gone, leaving me alone in a hospital room with machines beeping and my heart still not beating quite right, and the terrible understanding that my own son had just chosen a dinner reservation over staying with his mother who'd nearly died that morning. What none of us knew yet was that 4 hours later, I would code. My heart would stop, alarms would scream, doctors would rush in to save my life. And when the hospital tried to reach my emergency contacts to tell them I was dying, Kevin and Jessica would be unreachable, their phones silenced in a restaurant, and the truth about their neglect would become undeniable. My name is Ann Williams, and I'm 73 years old. I live alone in a small brick house on Magnolia Street in Charleston, South Carolina, where I raised my 2 sons and where I thought I'd built relationships that would sustain me through my aging years. My husband Thomas died 6 years ago from complications of diabetes. Since then, I'd been managing well on my own, staying active, maintaining my home, keeping up with friends and church activities. But I'd also been having some health issues. Nothing dramatic, just the normal things that come with aging: higher blood pressure, some arthritis, occasional dizziness. My doctor had warned me to watch for irregular heartbeats, but I dismissed it as standard caution. Then, that Tuesday morning, everything changed. I'd been making breakfast when suddenly my heart started racing, pounding so hard and fast I could feel it in my throat, in my ears, everywhere. The room spun. I grabbed for the counter but missed, and the next thing I knew, I was on the floor, unable to catch my breath. Miss Geneva, my neighbor who had a key for emergencies, found me. She'd been worried when she saw my newspaper still on the porch at 10 a.m. and came to check. She called 911 immediately. The paramedics arrived within minutes, and I was rushed to Charleston Medical Center. The doctors in the emergency room were concerned. My heart rhythm was dangerously irregular, a condition called atrial fibrillation that could lead to stroke or cardiac arrest if not controlled. They admitted me for observation and treatment, started me on medications, hooked me up to monitors. They also asked for my emergency contacts. I gave them Kevin's number, my older son, who lived just 20 minutes away, and my younger son Marcus's number in Atlanta. They reached Marcus first. He was immediately concerned, said he'd try to get a flight down that evening or first thing the next morning. They left messages for Kevin, 3 of them, before he finally called back around 4 p.m. By the time Kevin and Jessica arrived at 5 p.m., I'd been in the hospital for 6 hours. I'd been poked, prodded, scanned, medicated. I was scared, alone, and desperately wanting my family. If you've ever been hospitalized with a serious health scare and waited hours for family to arrive, you know the particular loneliness and vulnerability I felt. Every minute feels like an hour. Every sound makes you think someone's finally coming. And when they don't, you start to wonder if you matter as much as you thought you did. When Kevin and Jessica finally walked through the door, I felt relief wash over me. My son was here. I wasn't alone anymore. But that relief lasted about 30 seconds, just until Jessica made her comment about their dinner reservation. "Kevin, we need to make this quick. Our reservation at Magnolia's is at 7 and we can't be late." I'd heard of Magnolia's, an expensive, upscale restaurant that required reservations weeks in advance. Apparently, that reservation was more important than staying with me in the hospital. Kevin barely looked at me as he talked to the nurse. She'll be fine alone for a few hours, right? The doctor said she's stable. The nurse, a young woman named Sarah, looked uncomfortable. Well, Mrs. Williams is stable at the moment, but with atrial fibrillation, there's always a risk of complications. It's generally recommended that patients have someone with them. But it's not required, right? Jessica interrupted. She's being monitored by machines. The nurses are checking on her. She doesn't actually need us here. Sarah looked at me, clearly torn between medical recommendation and the family's insistence. It's not required, but great. We'll be back later tonight to check on her. Kevin finally approached my bed, leaned down perfunctorily to kiss my forehead. You're doing fine, Mom. We'll see you in a few hours. Kevin, please, I said, my voice weak. I'm scared. Can't you stay? Mom, you heard the nurse. You're stable. You're fine. Jessica and I have had this reservation for 6 weeks. We can't just cancel. But I'm in the hospital. I had a cardiac event. And you're being taken care of by doctors and nurses. We'd just be sitting here doing nothing. We'll come back later, I promise. He was already backing toward the door. Jessica was checking her phone, clearly anxious to leave. Tevin! But they were gone. The door swung shut behind them, and I was alone again. Sarah, the nurse, came to check my IV, her expression troubled. Mrs. Williams, I'm so sorry. I wish they'd stayed. Me too, I whispered. Is there anyone else I can call for you? A friend maybe, or other family? My other son is in Atlanta. He's trying to get here, but Kevin lives 20 minutes away. My voice broke. He chose a restaurant over staying with me. Sarah squeezed my hand. I'll check on you frequently, okay? You're not alone. We're taking care of you. But I was alone. That was exactly the problem. The next few hours passed slowly. Different nurses came to check my vitals, adjust my medications, ask how I was feeling. I watched the clock, watched the door, hoped Kevin would change his mind and come back early. He didn't. At 8:47 p.m., everything changed. I was dozing, half asleep, when suddenly I felt my heart do something strange. A flutter, then a skip, then a racing that felt different from the morning, more urgent, more wrong. I reached for the call button, but before I could press it, the monitor started screaming. Sarah rushed in, took one look at the screens, and called out, "Code Blue." I need a crash cart in here now. Suddenly, the room was full of people, doctors, nurses, a team I didn't recognize, all moving with controlled urgency around my bed. Mrs. Williams, stay with me, someone said. We're going to take care of you. But I couldn't stay with them. The room was fading, my vision tunneling, and the last thing I heard before everything went black was someone saying, "She's in VFib, we're losing her." I don't remember what happened next. I learned later that my heart had gone into ventricular fibrillation. Essentially, it stopped beating effectively. The medical team had to shock me twice with a defibrillator to get my heart back into rhythm. I was clinically dead for 90 seconds. While this was happening, the hospital was frantically trying to reach my emergency contacts. They called Kevin's phone 5 times. No answer. They called Jessica's phone. No answer. They finally reached Marcus in Atlanta. He answered on the first ring. "This is Charleston Medical Center calling about Ann Williams. Are you her son?" "Yes. Is she okay? I'm trying to get a flight." "Sir, your mother just coded. We had to resuscitate her. She's stable now, but we need family here immediately. Is there anyone closer who can come?" "My brother Kevin lives in Charleston. Have you called him?" "We've been calling repeatedly. No answer." "Try again. Keep trying." "I'm booking the next flight right now." The hospital staff kept calling Kevin and Jessica. No answer. No answer. No answer. Finally, at 9:23 p.m., Kevin called back. "This is Kevin Williams. I have several missed calls." The doctor who'd led my resuscitation, Dr. Patricia Chen, took the call. Mr. Williams, your mother coded 36 minutes ago. We had to resuscitate her. Where are you? We're at dinner. We said we'd come back later. Wait, she coded? Is she okay? She's stable now, but Mr. Williams, we've been trying to reach you for over half an hour. Your mother's heart stopped. We needed you here. We had our phones on silent. We were at a nice restaurant. We couldn't have them ringing. Your mother nearly died while you were at a restaurant with your phone silenced. There was a pause. We're coming now. Please do. Kevin and Jessica arrived at the hospital at 9:47 p.m., a full hour after I'd coded. By then, I was stable but sedated, still in the ICU with additional monitoring. Dr. Chen met them outside my room. I learned later what she said because Sarah the nurse told me the next day, and Dr. Chen herself confirmed it when I asked. Mr. Williams, your mother is stable, but she's had a serious cardiac event. Her heart stopped beating effectively. We had to shock her back to life. She was without effective circulation for 90 seconds. But she's okay now? She's alive. Whether there's been any damage from oxygen deprivation to the brain or other organs, we won't know for a day or two. Mr. Williams, I need to ask you something. Why did you leave the hospital tonight? We had dinner plans. Your mother was admitted for a serious cardiac condition. She was scared and alone. The nursing staff expressed concerns about her being left by herself. And when she coded and we needed to reach you, you were unreachable because you'd silenced your phones at a restaurant. Jessica spoke up defensively. The doctor said she was stable. We thought it was fine. Stable doesn't mean safe. Atrial fibrillation is unpredictable. That's why we recommend families stay close, especially the first night. Your mother-in-law needed you here, and you chose a dinner reservation instead. We didn't know she'd code, Kevin said. You didn't know she wouldn't. That's the point. When someone you love is hospitalized with a heart condition, you stay. You don't go to dinner and silence your phone. The conversation ended there, but word spread through the hospital. Nurses talked, doctors talked, and Sarah, my nurse, made sure to document everything in my chart. That family had been informed of risks, had chosen to leave anyway, had been unreachable during a code blue. When I woke up the next morning, Marcus was sitting beside my bed. He looked exhausted, his eyes red. Mama, thank God, you're awake. Marcus, when did you get here? 3 a.m. I took a red-eye flight as soon as the hospital called and told me you'd coded. I've been here ever since. Where's Kevin? Marcus's expression darkened. Kevin and Jessica went home around 11 last night. They said they'd come back this morning. They left again? After making a scene in the hallway about how they couldn't have known this would happen, how it wasn't their fault. Mama, the nurses are furious with them. Dr. Chen is furious. Everyone knows they left you alone to go to dinner and then were unreachable when you nearly died. I felt tears sliding down my face. He chose a restaurant over me. I know. I'm so angry I can barely think straight. I could have died alone. But you didn't. The medical staff saved you. And Mama, I'm here now. I'm not leaving. Over the next few days, as I recovered in the hospital, the full picture of what had happened became clear to me and to everyone else. Sarah and other nurses who'd been working that night talked openly about Kevin and Jessica leaving, about their insistence that the dinner reservation couldn't be canceled, about how they'd been unreachable during the code. Dr. Chin included a note in my medical records about family being informed of risks and choosing to leave anyway. The hospital social worker, a kind woman named Patricia, came to talk to me about my support system at home. Mrs. Williams, I need to ask some questions about your living situation and your family support. Okay. You live alone, correct? Yes, my husband died 6 years ago. And your sons? Kevin lives locally, Marcus lives in Atlanta. Yes. Mrs. Williams, I've reviewed the notes from the night you coded. I'm concerned about Kevin's response to your medical emergency. Leaving you alone in the hospital, being unreachable during a code, these aren't signs of a supportive family member. He made a mistake. Did he? Or did he make a choice? There's a difference. I was quiet. I'm asking because you're going to need support when you're discharged. You'll need someone to drive you to follow-up appointments, to help you if you have another episode, to be there in case of emergency. Can you count on Kevin for that? Could I? After what had happened, I honestly didn't know. I'll figure something out, I said quietly. Mrs. Williams, I'm going to refer you to some community resources, home health services, medical alert systems, transportation assistance. I want to make sure you have support that's reliable. The implication was clear. Kevin wasn't reliable. Kevin came to visit on my third day in the hospital. He brought flowers and wore an expression that was part shame, part defensiveness. Mom, how are you feeling? Better. Marcus has been here. I know, I've been busy with work. Kevin, you left me alone in the hospital to go to dinner. Then you were unreachable when I coded and almost died. Busy with work isn't really the issue here. He set the flowers down, looking uncomfortable. Mom, we didn't think anything would happen. The doctor said you were stable. Stable doesn't mean safe. That's what Dr. Chen told you, isn't it? I feel bad about what happened. Do you? Because it seems like you feel defensive, not bad. You made a choice, Kevin. You chose a restaurant reservation over staying with your mother who just had a cardiac event. And when the hospital tried to reach you because I was dying, you'd silenced your phone. We were at a nice restaurant. We couldn't have phones ringing. Your mother was in the hospital with heart problems, and you silenced your phone. Think about that, Kevin. Really think about what that says about your priorities. This isn't fair. You're making me out to be some kind of monster. I'm not making you out to be anything. I'm just stating facts. You left. You were unreachable. I coded. You weren't here. Jessica, who'd been standing silently near the door, spoke up. Anne, we had that reservation for 6 weeks. It cost $300. We couldn't just cancel. I nearly died, Jessica. I was clinically dead for 90 seconds. And you're talking about a $300 reservation? That's not what I meant. What did you mean? Explain to me how a dinner reservation justified leaving me alone when I was scared and sick and needed my family. Neither of them had an answer. You should go, I said tiredly. Marcus will be back soon, and I don't want him to have to deal with you right now. He's been here for 3 days straight while you've been busy with work. Mom, please leave Kevin. I need to rest. They left, and I lay in my hospital bed trying to process what my relationship with my son had become. Or maybe what it had always been, and I'd just been too blind to see it. Marcus returned an hour later with coffee and a determined expression. Mama, I talked to Dr. Chen. She says you'll be discharged in 2 days if everything continues to improve. I'm taking you home with me to Atlanta. Marcus, you don't need to do that. Yes, I do. You can't go home alone. You need someone to watch you, to make sure you take your medications, to drive you to follow-up appointments. And it's clear Kevin isn't going to do that. He's busy. He's 20 minutes away and couldn't be bothered to stay with you in the hospital. Mama, stop making excuses for him. He's my son, and I'm your son too. The one who got on a plane in the middle of the night and has been by your side ever since? The one who's actually here. Kevin being your son doesn't excuse what he did. Marcus was right. I knew he was right. But accepting it meant accepting that Kevin had failed me in a fundamental way. How long would I stay in Atlanta? As long as you need to. Denise and I already talked about it. You'll stay in our guest room. Denise works from home, so she can keep an eye on you during the day. We'll take you to your follow-up appointments. We'll make sure you're safe and cared for. What about my house? We'll arrange to have someone check on it. Maybe Miss Geneva can water your plants and bring in your mail. But Mama, your health is more important than your house. I stayed with Marcus and his wife Denise in Atlanta for 6 weeks. They were wonderful, attentive without being smothering, supportive without being condescending. They drove me to cardiology appointments, made sure I took my medications, helped me understand my new dietary restrictions. Denise even helped me set up a medical alert system for when I returned home. If anything happens again, you press this button and help comes immediately. You don't have to rely on Kevin. The implication stung, but it was necessary. During those 6 weeks, Kevin called me 3 times. 3 times in 6 weeks. Each call was brief, surface level, asking how I was doing, but never really engaging with the answer. He never apologized, not for leaving me in the hospital, not for being unreachable during the code, not for failing to show up in the days after. He sent a card for my birthday. I turned 74 while staying with Marcus, but didn't call, didn't visit, just a generic card with a generic message. Marcus was livid. He can't even call his mother on her birthday after she nearly died? He's busy. Stop, Mama. Just stop making excuses for him. When I finally returned to Charleston after 6 weeks, I was healthier, stronger, and clearer about what I needed. I had my medical alert system. I had a new cardiologist I liked. I had a plan for managing my health, and I had a new understanding of who I could count on. Miss Geneva came over the day I got home, bringing a casserole and warm hugs. "Oh, Anne, I'm so glad you're back. Marcus kept me updated, but it's not the same as seeing you myself. Thank you for checking on my house while I was gone. Of course, that's what neighbors do. That's what family should do too, but..." She trailed off, clearly aware of the Kevin situation. You can say it. Kevin should have been there, and he wasn't. I didn't want to speak ill, but yes. And when I found you that morning, when I called 911, I was terrified. And then to hear that Kevin left you alone in the hospital to go to dinner? I was furious. You heard about that? Honey, everyone heard about it. My friend Helen works at the hospital. She said the nurses were so angry, they were talking about filing some kind of report. A report? About patient neglect by family or something. I don't know the details, but they were upset on your behalf. I'd had no idea the situation had become that public. But I supposed hospital staff talked, and in a city like Charleston, news traveled. I settled back into my life in Charleston, but things were different now. I was more careful about my health, more aware of my limitations. I also had regular phone calls with Marcus, who checked on me daily. And I had distance from Kevin. He'd come by once since I'd been back, a quick visit where he asked superficial questions and left after 20 minutes. About 3 months after my hospitalization, Kevin called and asked if he could come over to talk. I agreed, curious about what he wanted. He arrived looking uncomfortable, fidgety. Jessica wasn't with him. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something." "Okay." "Jessica and I are having problems, financial problems. We overextended ourselves on some investments, and now we're struggling with debt. I was hoping maybe you could help us out." I stared at him. "You're asking me for money?" "Just a loan, maybe $15,000. "We'd pay you back." "Kevin, you left me alone in the hospital to go to dinner. You were unreachable when I coded and nearly died. You called me 3 times in 6 weeks while I recovered at Marcus's house. You didn't call on my birthday, and now you're here asking for money? This is different." "How? How is this different? You need something from me, so now I matter? But when I needed you, you couldn't be bothered." "Mom, I feel bad about the hospital thing, I do, but this is really serious. I had a cardiac event and you thought dinner was more important. That was serious too, Kevin. I'm asking for help. And I'm saying no. Kevin, I love you. You're my son. But I'm not giving you money after how you treated me. So you're punishing me? I'm protecting myself. There's a difference." He left angry, slamming the door behind him. I called Marcus and told him about Kevin's visit. Let me guess, he wants money? $15,000. And you said no? I said no. Good. Mama, Kevin made his choices. He showed you who he is. Believe him. Over the following year, Kevin's financial problems apparently worsened. I heard through mutual friends that he and Jessica had to sell their house and move to a smaller rental, that some of his business ventures had failed. He called me twice more asking for money. Each time I said no. "Mom, I'm your son." Family helps family. You're right, Kevin. Family does help family. Where were you when I was in the hospital? Where were you when I was recovering? Where were you on my birthday? He had no answer. Eventually, Kevin and Jessica moved to another state, somewhere cheaper where they could rebuild. I got occasional updates from Marcus, who Kevin still contacted sometimes, but Kevin rarely contacted me, maybe twice a year, always brief, always surface level, and I was okay with that. It hurt, but I was okay with it, because I'd learned something important during that hospitalization. The way people treat you when you're vulnerable tells you everything you need to know about who they really are. Kevin had shown me he was someone who prioritized convenience over compassion, reservations over relationships, his own comfort over his mother's needs. And I'd shown myself that I was strong enough to set boundaries, to say no, to protect myself even from my own child. Now, if you're listening to this story, if you've been abandoned by family members during a health crisis, if you've been left alone when you needed support most, I need you to hear this. The way people treat you when you're vulnerable reveals who they truly are. Love is proven through presence, not excuses. You deserve family members who show up, who stay, who put their phones on loud in case you need them, who choose you over dinner reservations. And if your family doesn't do that, you have every right to set boundaries, to protect yourself, to build your support system from people who actually care. Here's what you need to do if you find yourself in a similar situation. First, recognize the truth. If someone leaves you alone during a medical crisis, that's not a mistake. It's a choice. Don't make excuses for them. Second, build alternate support systems. Find reliable friends, hire professional help if needed, connect with community resources. Don't depend solely on family who've proven they're unreliable. Third, set clear boundaries. You don't have to maintain close relationships with people who abandoned you in your time of need, even if they're family. Fourth, don't feel guilty for protecting yourself. Saying no to someone who failed you isn't punishment, it's self-preservation. And fifth, invest in relationships with people who show up, like Marcus, who dropped everything to be by my side, like Miss Geneva, who checked on me and called 911, like the hospital staff who advocated for me when my own son wouldn't. Will it hurt to distance yourself from family who failed you? Yes. Will there be judgment from people who think you should forgive and forget? Probably. But your well-being matters more than other people's comfort with your boundaries. I set boundaries with Kevin after he left me alone in the hospital. I refused to pretend it didn't matter. I refused to give him money after he'd shown me I only mattered when he needed something. Was our relationship damaged? Yes, but Kevin damaged it when he chose a dinner reservation over staying with his mother who'd had a cardiac event. I just refused to pretend the damage hadn't happened. Somewhere in Charleston, there's a 74-year-old woman who nearly died alone in a hospital while her son ate at an expensive restaurant with his phone silenced. Who survived, recovered, and learned exactly who she could count on and who she couldn't, who built a life with clear boundaries, reliable support systems, and the wisdom to know the difference between family who loves you and family who just expects you to love them. You can do the same. Don't accept abandonment as normal. Don't make excuses for people who fail you in critical moments. Don't sacrifice your well-being to maintain relationships with people who've shown they don't value you. Show up for yourself the way you deserve others to show up for you. Stand strong. Set boundaries. Choose people who choose you. Your life, your health, your peace, they all matter. Protect them fiercely. You're worth showing up for, even if you have to show up for yourself.